Joined now on the Buffalo Wild Wings guest line by the Oklahomans, Gina Mizell. Gina, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us today.
How are you guys doing?
We're doing great. Boy, you've been busy. A lot going on up there in Stillwater.
Yeah, yesterday particularly was a busy day with obviously the decision with Marcus Smart and LeBron Nash and Markel Brown all announcing they're coming back next season, and then there was some football availability. The last, press conferences or post-practice availability, whatever you want to call it, before the spring game, and that's obviously coming up Saturday. So we're kind of on the stretch run, I guess, of stuff going on. But yeah, yesterday was pretty busy.
Let's start there, Gina. Marcus Smart. You mentioned the others, Markel Brown, LeBron Nash, but Marcus Smart, I mean, just looking on ESPN, Chad Ford had him as the number 2 overall prospect coming out in this year's draft. How shocked were you that he's coming back, and ultimately why? What made him make this determination at the end of the day?
I was definitely surprised, but I wouldn't say I was shocked. Just based on what I've heard from inside the athletic department and what my partner on the beat, John Helsley, who's even way more tapped in than I am, what kind of he's been telling me and that sort of thing. And I kind of felt like the longer that he waited to decide, maybe the more there would be a chance that he actually would come back. And he's just a different kind of kid. I mean, he's someone who obviously his tough life growing up has been pretty well chronicled. Lived in a really bad part of Dallas and kind of escaped that area, and came to Oklahoma State. He's very close with his teammate Phil Forte. They essentially came to OSU together, and he's a guy that just values the college experience, which it sounds like such a cliche, and you hear that thrown around, and a lot of times it's not true, but I think it's definitely true with Marcus Smart, and certainly the way that the season ended for the Cowboys. Getting bounced in the first round, well, I guess the second round technically of the NCAA tournament, losing to Oregon, and just really playing pretty badly as a team in that NCAA tournament game. I think that certainly contributed, and I think just a chance to have a lot of success as a team next year, and enjoy one more year of college life. I think that ultimately appealed to him, and he just wanted to play one more year in Stillwater. It's surprising, but I wasn't shocked.
What are the expectations of this team? I mean, returning this trio. Gone from a team that was going to be rebuilding and possibly struggling to all of a sudden possibly a favorite next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think this certainly puts them as the Big 12 favorite going into next season, especially with Kansas losing all of their starters from this past year's team with McLemore leaving and all those seniors. So yeah, and if you're in position to win the Big 12 or favorite to win the Big 12, then that kind of automatically makes you a national contender. So I don't necessarily maybe want to say this is a Final Four bust or anything like that, but certainly this should be a team that's ranked maybe in the top 10, top 15, maybe even a little bit higher going into next season. So in a lot of ways, there's a lot of excitement. In a lot of ways, there's, Travis Ford's seat has been teetering on hot and warm and maybe lukewarm, the past couple of years, and so in a lot of ways, I think it's going to make his seat even hotter because this team better perform next year. But certainly, the scene yesterday at the Student Union, there were students lined up all along the balconies that overlooked the atrium, and it was a pretty spectacular scene. So the basketball here in Stillwater, kind of gone under the radar in favor of football the past couple of seasons, but certainly I think this will be a program that's energized heading into next season.
Good for the state of Oklahoma. Right now with Lon Kruger here, with these guys coming back, good buzz in Oklahoma right now with the quality of basketball. You love to see that. Your colleague Barry Tremmel wrote a great article today, I thought. And it's not the norm right now in college athletics, especially college basketball, to see a guy like Marcus Smart, so highly touted, to come back and not go out and not get that money that he's worked so hard for. So I salute him. I say bravo, young man, because you don't see this very often in college athletics, especially college basketball. Pretty special moment there yesterday in Stillwater. Let's talk some football, Gina. New offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. Reading a piece you wrote today in the Oklahoman about the new offensive coordinator, Mike Yurcik. Sounds like he's starting to find his way there. Sounds like he's starting to really understand the way he fits into everything. And it sounds like as fast as it's been there, that offense is going to be going even more up-tempo, even faster.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest change, and it's really not even a change. It's kind of a an addition or just kind of a different look as far as this offense could be this coming season. And I'm really curious to see that in the spring game coming up on Saturday, how fast these guys are going to go. Because, I mean, as you well know, and so many teams in this Big 12, and Oklahoma State's one of them, they were already going fast with that no-huddle attack. So, yeah, I'm curious to see. Again, they've got experienced quarterbacks now. They've got experience at running back and wide receiver and on the offensive line. So you've kind of got the tools in place that can move at that pace. So that should be certainly interesting to see. But, yeah, I mean, a lot was made about Mike Yurcich when he was hired. You know, it's a guy that most of us had never heard of. I had certainly never heard of him. I had never heard of Shippensburg University until he was hired. So, and you could kind of tell his first availability after that first week of spring practice. You know, people all just kind of crowded around him, and you could kind of see his eyes just getting bigger and bigger. And it was kind of like, whoa, I'm not in Shippensburg, Pennsylvania anymore. But in talking to him yesterday, you can kind of just tell that there's a more of a comfort factor, and he's getting used to things. And obviously his family settled here in Stillwater. He was talking about how he had all the quarterbacks over for a little cookout about a week ago. And so you can kind of just tell that he's getting more acclimated. And Mike Gundy made an interesting comment that now he's more vocal in practice than he was maybe a couple weeks ago. So I think that's just natural. Anytime any of us change jobs or change, you know, where you live and pretty much you completely change your life, but there's going to be a little bit of a you know, just adjustment period. And it sounds like he's starting to get acclimated. And so, yeah, he'll kind of make his unofficial debut to Oklahoma State fans during the spring game on Saturday.
Gina, 2 weeks ago, Coach Gundy basically said that Clint Shelf's going to be the starter. Now all of a sudden things have changed a little bit. 3 guys taking reps with the number ones. What's going on over there?
That's an interesting situation there because, yeah, I mean, 2 weeks ago when he made those comments that, you know, I revisited in the newspaper this morning, yeah, it certainly sounded like a declaration that Clint Shelf was the number one guy and that there basically wasn't a competition to start that first game. So I don't know if it's a situation where, you know, J.W. Walsh and or Wes Blunt has improved considerably or started to push Clint Shelf a little bit more in recent practices, or you know, Gundy was more or less refining his statement. I'm not sure exactly what's going on there, but certainly when you have 3 guys that all have success, that all played, that all started, that all passed for 1,000 yards last year, you know, they're all going to compete, and they've all been competing, whether Clint Shelf was, you know, technically delegated the number one guy or not. So I would still most likely expect him to be the starter, at least to start 2013. So, you know, I don't think he's saying, oh, it's a completely open competition or anything like that, but I still think Clint Shelf's the front runner. You know, I wouldn't be totally shocked if Wes Blunt ended up winning the job, but I think what they would like to do ideally is to have Clint Shelf play this year. You redshirt Wes Blunt, you use J.W. Walsh in those special short yardage packages, and then you've got Wes Blunt there to start the next 3 seasons. So I think that's ideally what they would like to do. They would like to see Clint Shelf hang on to this job, but certainly if you know, somebody comes along that's able to beat him out, then I don't think they would necessarily hesitate to put the guy that's going to give him the best chance to win, you know, under center.
Gina, there's also been a change on the defensive side of the ball. New defensive coordinator Glenn Spencer comes over. Reading throughout the spring, it sounds like the theme is from the defensive line all the way out to the edge players, more aggressive, more up in your face, more physical at the line of scrimmage, kind of the mentality of this defense. Is this going to be an improved defense for Oklahoma State next season?
I think it's definitely going to look a little bit different, and I think the more aggressive style is something that had to be done. I mean, you saw it in Bedlam, just how much cushion that those receivers had to catch the ball on the outside, and that kind of continued in the Baylor game and against those really good passing teams in the Big 12, and that simply just it didn't work. So it's like you got to change something, and so I think that the tighter coverage is something that certainly, you know, Justin Gilbert and those 2 younger cornerbacks, Kevin Peterson and Ashton Lampkin, have been working on this spring, and something that kind of needs to be done. And I mean, they're not going to do it every play. It's just a matter of knowing when to play bump and run and knowing when to maybe get off a little bit. And you know, it's going to even go down to the safeties. A guy like Daquan Lowe can come up and press guys in the slot a little bit too. So I'm curious to see how that develops, you know, this season and even on Saturday as well. And yeah, the good passing defense starts obviously with the pass rush, and that's something that Oklahoma State didn't do very well last year either. So the defensive line's got to be more aggressive, and I don't think you're going to see any huge dramatic changes as far as scheme or or anything like that. It's more kind of just an attitude. That's the way that Mike Gundy described it. Just kind of having that aura about you, and that, okay, we're gonna come after you. And because if you are playing soft coverage, you kind of just start to fall into that. And I'm not saying the players were lazy or anything like that, but you kind of just fall into a different mindset. So that certainly is a change that I think needed to happen, and so we'll see how it goes this coming season.
Gina, this Saturday when you're watching that game, what are going to be the main points of emphasis for you to kind of gauge how this spring has gone and if they've made improvements? Is it the quarterback play along the line of scrimmage, the skill position guys? What are you going to be watching most?
A lot of the things we've just talked about, I am curious to see how the defense looks, most notably those cornerbacks. I mean, Justin Gilbert is a guy who just really had, I don't want to say a bad season, but a subpar season compared to what people expected last year. And we've heard a lot about how he's got a renewed, focus, and his attitude's a lot better. And so that should show on the field. So I'm curious to see how he plays and how those two younger guys that I just mentioned, Peterson and Lampkin, look on the other side, looking to replace Broderick Brown at that other cornerback spot. And yeah, I am curious to see the quarterbacks. I am curious to see how Clint Shelf's arm has developed, because certainly for all the good things he did down the stretch last season, his arm, it isn't as accurate as maybe a Wes Lunt, even though Lunt is a little bit more raw. And I'm curious to see how Lunt's grown and to see if J.W. Walsh's arm has improved. So, a lot of the things we've just talked about, I think, are the biggest things that I'll be looking forward to. And just how fast this offense does go, because I've heard that, again, they're waiting for the referee during these scrimmages to put the ball down. So if it's really going that fast, then I'm gonna have some trouble trying to tweet and type and write notes and stuff, because I'm not going to be able to look down at all. So I'm curious to see how fast I've got to write and to take my notes going forward on Saturday.
You need to get a court reporter for you to work for you, Gina. Those people can type fast. Hey, also one quick thing. Who's going to be the kicker punter? You don't have to answer that. I'm just saying, looking at the spring game, Quinn Sharp, he's handled both duties for so long now. Going to be interesting to see how Oklahoma State replaces the guy who was so integral part of their special teams. Gina, Mizell, thanks. Great stuff.
Absolutely, you guys. Have a good one.